obvious part. Where did you start a church, and why the heck did you pick that place?
Yeah. So, started in Knoxville, Tennessee, which is one of the greatest cities in the world. Okay. And Sweb is like, man, I don't know about that. It's great though. So I
love the big mirror ball. I think it's great. I don't know what that is.
It's like what we're known for, right? And then that one time in the 90s, we were decent at football. That one guy with a big forehead.
That one guy. Yeah.
Yeah. We started in Knoxville. My name is Austin, by the way. Hello. And started Heart and Soul Church in Knoxville, Tennessee, and started in 2020, September 2020, in the middle of a pandemic, which is a great idea. When you're starting a church, you should probably just wait until the next pandemic and start it then. People love that. So
hang on. Do you feel like now that we're kind of sort of on, I guess we technically on the backside of that whole COVID thing. Yeah. Do you feel like it is easier now compared to when you start? Have you found that things are more simple now for your church plant process? For your building process?
Maybe simpler. Yeah. Where we're not talking about COVID stuff. I hated talking about COVID stuff and having to do special whatevers for COVID stuff. And you might want to talk about that. But maybe simpler, but not as fun, to be honest.
Really?
Just like
you like the chaos.
I liked it. I liked the whole launch phase, just like not having a church, not being a pastor, just like out there running and gunning and trying to figure it out as we go. I'm actually glad that it was a pandemic because it was different. It wasn't, even with the podcast name, one size fits none. Like no one, this was not a thing. No one had done that. And so that got me really excited. And
all right, so hang on. So before we get ahead of ourselves, let's back up then. So you decide to start a church, which we'll get to that in a second, and you do it in September 2020. COVID generally is like March 15th. This is when the world shut down. I remember that just because I was at Disney Springs before Disney World shut down the next day. So it's just that's really relevant to me at the time. So which means in that case, you had a couple of months run up where you could have said, nah, never mind. I'm going to go work at Home Depot and I'll come back in 2 years. Yep. So I want to start at your September 2020. And I know you said Knoxville and we started September 2020. I want to work backwards a little bit and then we'll jump back ahead to your launch process. Yep. So walk me from September back to March. Like, why didn't you stop? Or what did you have to change from, let's call it March until September? Or maybe you're like, bro, we didn't even start the process until March or April. Where are you at in whole, in all that?
All right. Season? So I'll back you up to July 2019 is when we decided Knoxville, when we decided to it was time to start a church. And so we sold our house. We moved in with my parents to save money, takes money, all of the things. So we're living with my parents till March 1st. And we purchased a house in Knoxville, February 1st. We had our second child, February 4th. And then March 1st, I preached at Soul Quest, my dad's church that he started. Yeah. And we drove to Knoxville with a U-Haul. My parents and brother-in-law and sister dropped us off, helped us unload everything. And they were like, peace. See you guys on the flippity flip. And then we were like, all right, here we go. We got this plan. We got this awesome ideas. And we got this fundraising strategy. And we got this recruiting strategy. And we're going to blow Knoxville up. And then mid-March comes. And your boy, President Trump, comes on and says, it's over. And we were like, oh, frick, it really is over. Like, how do you start a church when you literally can't meet with people? And so a lot of our strategy was like, we'll show up at coffee shops and be like, hey, you want to be a part of a church? And the coffee shop shut down. And so I was freaking out. We actually weren't supposed to move until after Easter. And Sarah talked me into moving sooner to get started sooner so that we could get on the ground and have an extra month under our belt. And had she not talked us into doing that, we would not have moved.
You'd be stuck.
Way. Yeah.
That's fascinating. So, I have plenty of stories like those where you feel like it's one way and then your wife comes in and says something that you think is ridiculous or chaotic, but on the back end that works. My wife, I don't know if you know this, my wife's the reason we moved to Charlotte. She didn't want to move to Colorado 1 year before. But then 1 year later, we're in Colorado, and she's like, "Babe, let's just screw it. Hey, let's just move to Charlotte." Oh yeah, that's only 1,500 miles with no job. So that's interesting. I didn't actually know that part. So, okay, so first of all, how old are you in March of 2020?
28.
28. So you'd lived on the planet a few times. You're not 21 with this big like, woo, whatever. It's gonna be amazing. So you've got some sort of adulthood behind you where you have some sort of logic and reason, theoretically. And so you're moving in that direction. At this point, did you already have a launch date in mind, or at least a window that you're trying to, like, did you already know September was going to be your time?
Yeah. September 2020. That's when we chose, and we were like, all right, we're going to do this. And when we moved, we thought, I started talking to friends that I had met through different organizations, and they were all talking about, we're going to launch online, and we're going to push our physical launch back, and we're going to do this, that, and the other. And to be honest, I was sitting there thinking like, all right, well, we're going to do some different stuff, I'm sure, but I've never really been convinced. We have the live stream, which Sweb has opinions on, but we have all of that. But I've never been convinced that is any sort of alternative at all. That is an additive.
It's bonus. It's supplemental.
Just,
sure.
It's just there to be, I don't know what it's there for, to be honest. And Sweb, you can speak into that more, but we were not sold on the whole, we'll just do stuff online thing. So that was not an option for us. So we were either going to just hold true, launch in September, or we were going to wait till January or wait till the next September. And again, this is Sarah. Sarah was like, people are quite literally dying, Austin, and they are quite literally going to hell, Austin. And if you decide to wait, this is literally the perfect time to start a church. Like, you say you want people, you want to, like, our thing is we're filling heaven from Knoxville. She's like, people are dying right now. So if you want to fill heaven, now's the time to start reaching them. And I was like, now is it. Well, we're going to stay true in September. So,
yeah. Okay. So then you did, and you're like, hey, fine. Cause your wife says, and when the Holy Spirit speaks, it's your wife for some reason. And so, okay, you're on it. You're about to do it. But again, it looks different. Like you said, you show up to a coffee shop to make friends. You can't do that. There's no coffee shop at the time.
Yep.
Now, long story short, you did obviously launch and you met in person. So, but there was a window between there. Like, did you buy a mailer? Cause you can't start a church without a mailer. They say. Did you do that? And then, oh crap, we had to cancel. Like, how did your build up and marketing and purchasing, all of those kind of things, did it change at all? Or were you a victim of the overly used supply chain issues?
Oh man,
walk me through some of that preparation stuff between March and September from a tactical, practical standpoint of actually collecting, feather banners and parking signs and whatever else.
Yeah. So we had a bunch of stuff already purchased, ready to go for what we called kickoff parties, which were basically just, hey, come hear about this new church that's starting. And so we would rent out a coffee shop. And of course, all those rentals got deleted. We got lucky and found the school we're meeting in October of 2019. So I was on it quick, and I was like, hey, we're going to start meeting there. We rented it. Once the pandemic hit, schools didn't want to rent that weren't already on the books. So we got lucky with that. Mm-hmm. But our whole strategy was built around meeting people, doing these kickoff parties, doing stuff at coffee shops, all of that. So all of that was obviously stupid, and we couldn't do that anymore. And so we shifted everything online. And we didn't do online. We were big believers of don't do church before you're a church. We were big believers on that. So we didn't do any worship events. We didn't do any sermons. We didn't do church online as the way you would think of it, 3 songs and a 25-minute sermon. Didn't do that.
So wait, back up. I think I do remember you telling me that a long time ago. Why did you do that? Where did that logic come from? I don't hate it. I'm just curious where'd that come from. The
don't do church before your church.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that came from, I heard that statement and then I built my own beliefs around it. But basically my belief was if we do church before we're a church, we're probably going to do it with 2 acoustic guitars and a cajon. And that's not what we're going to launch with. And so we're sharing.
It's a false advertising thing.
False advertising. So we're telling people this is what we like, and the people that like acoustic worship and us 4 and no more, they're going to love it. And then when we launch with a full band and 400 people, they're not going to love it anymore. And then we're going to get the Karens to already be upset about something. So we
that's actually really smart.
Karens.
Yeah. No, prevent Karens. Somebody please start a podcast called Prevent Karens. That surely is a meme page somewhere. So, no, that's actually really smart. I'm a big, opponent, I guess, of the false advertising. So in my context, starting campuses, to your point, I didn't want to do anything that didn't look like what they were going to show up to. So, but of course, when you're doing campuses, you have the money and you have the full band and you've got the stuff. But I had not heard until I don't believe I've heard this except for you, use that logic on the other end of that. Because everybody's eager. Let's get going. Two acoustic guitars is fine. It'll work out. People kind of get a feel for what we're doing, and they'll understand. And I don't know that that's true. I don't know that they do get the feel for it. I think, to your point of the Karen, I think that is more relevant. So I think that's actually pretty brilliant.
I feel like people get the feel of what it is. They don't. Yeah. People don't see your vision. They don't see what you want it to be. They just see what it is. And so we've actually never advertised our kids ministry, because our kids ministry, like we don't have a lot of kids because we got a lot of young adults. And so this is even a conversation we've had where I was like, man, do we need to do something about having kids? And you were like, no, just use what you got, serve who you have. Do you. And so we almost all of our Facebook, Instagram ads, even pre-launch and now post-launch a year in a few months, are all geared towards, man, if you want to find your people, you want to find friends, this is the place to do it. So
that's great. Okay. So then you did it. Now, how much do you love Tennessee though? Because you're in a place that's generally probably was a little more flexible, a little less chaotic than some of the other states out there that allowed you to open and meet. And of course, for you to have a school that's like, hey, no, it's fine, we'll open back up, it'll be great. Yeah. How much does that play into it? Like, would you been able to do you have other friends in other states that are like, bro, that's just not possible here?
Yeah. I got a few friends that experienced. Now, some almost everyone uses it as an excuse. And so you can claim COVID pretty much over anything in 2020 and 2021. And so I have some people that do that, but then others that did that. And it's true. You couldn't rent a school in Boston in 2020 or 2021.
That's right.
And so, Tennessee was open pretty quickly, but here in Knoxville, we actually, we had a federal judge come out and, basically go against the school board and go against all the different stuff. And so we had mask mandates and stuff much longer than anywhere else in Tennessee, anywhere else in a lot of the Southeast. So some of it it just is what it is. So,
all right. So you built your church, you did all this stuff on the front end. This is not your first rodeo. Like you said, your dad had started a church before. You've seen that. You've been around these people. You've gotten plenty of coaching from various people. You've been to the conferences. You've done all the things. And again, you're not 21 with a big vision and no experience and no intelligence. You lived a few years. So you've done this. Now you're in September. Man, give us like 2 weeks leading up to quote launch day. Did you call it a launch day? How did you promote this thing? Like, this is the big event. And remember, if you don't launch large, you just don't have a good church thing to say. So just even your thought process, your philosophy of like, oh my gosh, are you shooting for 1,000 people that day? Did you have a pass fail sort of, scale in your mind? Like, just walk us through that whole like kind of 2 week period and what you're thinking.
Yeah. So 2 weeks leading up to launch, I was very much so against mailers. And this is a mistake. We ended up doing a mailer. We had one family come from the mailer that we spent like 10 grand on. And we were promised by, the experts that we would get a lot more than that. But we had one family show up. They are no longer with us. Surprise, surprise. And so that's just an aside, but we did do the mailer and went out 2 weeks before all that. We did most of our advertising and stuff, all social media. And it was not just the ad though. It was anytime someone followed us on social media, we immediately reached out to them, via social media. And so that's like direct message. And if we could connect them directly to a person, we felt like we were going to be a lot more successful. So we did that. Now, the 2 weeks before.
Hang on, you said social media, like just Instagram? Did you do multiple channels? Did somebody run this for you? What are you doing?
Yeah. So we did Facebook and Instagram. I ran all that. We're just now got other people doing that, but I ran all of that. And some of our best really like, man, we got a bunch of people at our church because of this one ad we did called, we just said, stop scrolling. And now, man, like every church planter in that is loosely connected to us, like they do that now. But when we did it, like we hadn't seen other people do it. And so it really caught a lot of attention. And so, and then my belief all of pre-launch was if I can get somebody in the room with Sarah, that she was a secret weapon. And it's true. Like if you get across the table with Sarah, it's game over. I already know they're going to join our launch team. So,
so I can speak to that and just vouch for that. I totally agree with that. You know, I've told you that many, many times, many years ago. Hey, you should come work for us, mainly because you'll bring Sarah with you, kind of thing. So the joke is, or one of the kind of funny jokes is, you know, she's always happy. She's always laughing. Everything's funny. But she's just got that vibe. So I can attest to that. That's really good. Hey, I want to go back to something you said. You glossed over. Everybody else glosses over, and they don't do this correctly. Very, very few people do. But when people followed you, you reached out to them.
Yeah.
It's like, I feel like when somebody's following you on social media, it's like, hey, I care about you. I'm following you. You know, follow is kind of a silly word these days, I get. But the point is they are doing it. And it's fascinating to me how many people go, oh, yeah, whatever, who cares? And then just let them fall flat. But social media is not social if you're not social. Yep. So was that something you just learned? Is that an Enneagram thing? Because some people will blame it on personality. Oh, well, you know, Austin's just more friendly than me.
No, that's something we heard that someone else was doing. And it took effort and work, which is why most church planners don't do it.
Right.
Is every time someone followed us, it's basically them saying, like, if somebody walks up to you in person and says hello, like, what? I mean, you're going to say hello, I'm Austin, and then you're going to introduce yourself. Well, someone following you on Instagram is saying hello, and so us reaching out saying, hey, thanks for following us, made a huge difference. The amount of people that responded and said, wow, I can't believe that a church would respond on Instagram. And it's like, well, yeah, because we do that to this day. And anytime someone follows us, we have a message we send them. It's copy and paste, but they don't know that, you know, till now.
Yeah. Yeah. That's crazy. So, okay. So now I know we talked about 2 weeks leading up to launch. Walk me through your team though. Did people move with you? Because you've got to start this church. You walk me through some of your thought process and kind of the struggles that are obvious around the pandemic and stuff. But like, did you have teams say, I'm moving with you? And then the pandemic, they changed their mind. You know, because these people have got to move all towards, and I'm not saying they have to move with you. Maybe you met people locally as well, but everybody's moving towards this like September date. Yeah. And so talk us through the team, who they are, like, where'd you find them? That kind of thing.
Yeah. I was told a lot of things, and you know, like when you're planting yourself, you're like, oh no, we're the exception, you know? No, are you kidding me? Like no one's ever been Austin Coleman before. Get out of here.
Right. True.
And so we were told things like, you know, you don't want people to move with you because they don't know anybody, and you need people that know people. Things like that, you know, they wouldn't actually move. They'd commit, they wouldn't go. So we had a few people commit and then not end up moving, which was fine. We did have some people move with us though. And it did hold true, especially in the pandemic. Like they didn't know people. And so they were like, but to me, it was more of a confidence boost to me to say, okay, somebody else besides me and my wife believe in this. And so while they maybe didn't help us recruit people, they were huge confidence boost to me. And then just honestly, like we didn't have to use stock photos and stuff on Instagram. We had real people. And so in a lot of those practical ways, having people move with us was incredible. So we had like, I don't know, 10 or 12 people move from West Tennessee, Maryland, to Knoxville. And that was great. And I'm glad that they moved. Let's see. As far as what was like,
how big was this launch team or this group of people? I don't know what you call them, but how big was this group? Let's say 2 weeks before you launched. Like, how many people had you activated, plugged in? They're starting to either give or serve. Maybe you had some parameters that they had to meet before you qualified them as a launch team. What did that look like 2 weeks out?
Our qualification for launch team was very loose, very loose. Ours was essentially you need to invest and invite. So invest your time, talent, treasure, and invite people to be a part of this. That was it. And so I'd say, man, probably 60% of the people did that to some extent. The other ones showed up every time that we needed them. They showed up. Yeah. So not everyone gave, but we had about 100 people that were on the launch team. And that was all recruiting online because remember, we couldn't meet in person until July. Right. We didn't have worship leaders until July. And when we got these worship leaders, first thing I told them was, we're not going to pay you and we're not going to launch without a full band. And, and so we sat in McDonald's because it was the only place open inside. And I told them like, y'all are great. They were both 20 years old, been married a year, and you know, this is it. And y'all go find a band. They went and found a band. And 2 weeks before, we did 2 weeks of practice services. One thing we said from all of the launch season when we could gather was, we don't practice on people. We don't practice on people. So we said that over and over and over again. And so we practice on each other. And we still do this to this day, where we're like, we'll take weeks where we'll have everybody come early. If we're changing something, we will practice on each other. So anyway, so we did that for 2 weeks, did a full practice service. Glad we did, because rough. And you know, launch day was great. We did call it launch day. We called it a launch team.
Yeah.
Some of those.
So hang on. Don't go there. Don't go there yet. Okay. You said you had about 100-ish people on launch team.
Yep.
What are the demographics generally, roughly? Because you mentioned earlier, I know this, of course, you have fewer kids than a lot of churches out there, but like, walk us through some of those demographics.
Almost exclusively 25 and under.
Wow.
And we had 3 people on our launch team that were over 50.
Wow. Okay. So the obvious question that I've always wanted to know based on that kind of metric is, like, how did you pay for it? Were those people tithing? Did you do a great job of saving on the front end? Are you independently wealthy? How did you pay for it with 25-year-olds? Yeah.
So I am very independently wealthy as a pastor's child and a minister since 20. So Sarah and I individually, as a couple, raised $200,000 before we started. So that was me. My dad allowed me to leave on Sundays and go preach at other places. And the biggest gift we ever got was $3,000 when I preached at a church in Atlanta. That's the biggest.
So you're just hustling. So you're just hustling. Nobody's writing you a $40,000 check.
No, we sat down over coffee with well over 100 people, laid out the vision, said what we wanted to do, when we were going to do it. We had a full business plan, the whole 9 yards. We had stuff printed out that looked nice and whatever. Handed that over to them. I shared all the vision. Sarah laughed and did her thing. And then we gave people timelines too. We said, hey, we want to give you 3 days to pray about it, talk about it. And then if it's okay with you, we'll follow up and see how much you want to partner financially with us. And so we did that deadlines with everybody that was joining the launch team, our worship leaders,
love that,
everybody. So we said, hey, we love this, but we think, man, deadlines are godly. And so I have no scripture for that, but I just felt that way. And so
that sounds right.
So we told them that, and then it put pressure on people too, where they decided like, oh, do I really? Cause people know, man, they can, and they'll talk themselves into or out of anything, but 3 days is plenty of time. So
that's right. Wow.
Yeah. So we raised 200,000 coffees.
Yeah.
People that we wrote down a list. I wrote down a list of every pastor I've ever met. I wrote down a list of every church that I've ever been loosely connected to. My dad was able to get us connected to a lot of churches because he was traveling evangelist, got us connected to a lot of churches in that way. We wrote down every single person that we ever went to school with, that we knew as a family friend at Soul Quest, everybody. And we called them, asked them if we could meet with them. We didn't give hardly any info on the phone because we wanted to wait till we got them in person. We did the same thing with asking people to move with us too. I wrote down everybody I ever lived with, everybody that was ever on a dorm with me at Liberty, everybody. And I was like, hey, you're wasting your life. You should come with us to start this church.
That's right.
I know you don't know anything about Knoxville, but you know, you could be used here. And I mean, we struck out way more than we hit the ball, but we just said, so we knew like, man, if it's going to be 10% of people that say yes or whatever, then we'll just ask 1,000 people and then go from there. So it was a lot.
So before we get into launch day and then beyond, obviously, in whatever your version of success is and that kind of thing, like, to this point so far, and I know a lot of the story, but I don't know all the details either. So I'm even learning some things today, which is very helpful for me to hear.
Yeah.
But what I'm not hearing is anything that's like a fail or a miss or negative. You know, I know that your wife has never had a bad day.
No.
But surely you have. Like, make the rest of us feel a little bit better about our church plant processes or whatever. What happened other than the pandemic, but after you described the pandemic a minute ago, you've still laid out a few successes. Dropping the $200,000 number after you said, "Oh, we started a church in the pandemic," makes everybody goes, "Well, frick." So,
a lot of that we did raise. I will say a lot of that we did raise before we moved.
Sure.
So the pandemic hadn't quite hit yet. So
what punched you in the face? Give me at least one thing. Like what is something that other than the obvious pandemic stuff and then the federal judge thing and all that, like, did you have slowdowns? And it's okay if you don't, but did you have some sort of hit? You're like, man, I did not see that coming.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, for us, it's been less of gut punches, and it's just been little jabs that just won't go away. They just keep coming up, and it's little things that like shouldn't bother me, to be honest, but it's when people leave and people that you're like, oh, you know, like I thought they said they'd be here forever, you know, and then they leave. On launch day, we had like 20 people give their life to the Lord. First thing I hear is the person who was supposed to be leading our kids ministry. She's leaving the church, and that she is, you know, pissed off about X, Y, and Z. And I was like, bro, get out of here. Like, are you kidding me? And I told her, I was like, this is nothing but gossip. And what you're saying is we just had 20 people say yes to Jesus. What are you doing? And so that was annoying. I'll never forget that on launch day. Beautiful. You know, I think if we could do it over again, we would have brought in a professional to tweak and tune all of our sound and everything.
Okay.
Because we had a lot of talent on stage, and the guys that were running sound and stuff were incredible volunteers. They'd done so much research. One of them moved with us, and all this stuff is great. But there was no professional until recently, and it's just been night and day. But like those people that came on launch day, you know, they do or don't come back, and it is what it is. So the pandemic was a big one. I've lost a lot of hair since we moved. Like a lot of hair. That's what I'm in at right now. So that's good. That was a big one.
That's good. Okay, so let's start. Now we're the day of, or the night before, Saturday night before. Let's start there, and just no specific question. Just go from Saturday after dinner to obviously the next morning launch day, and then just that next week. What you feel, what you see. Give us the quick hits, the highlight reel, whatever.
Okay. Yeah. Man, it's like a whirlwind. I don't even remember, to be honest. So,
let's start with the easy thing, the one that tells you if you're good or not. Did you have any people show up?
Yeah, we had some people show up.
Okay. So was it what you expected?
It was slightly above what we wanted. 500. We had been hoping, praying, working for 500 since we decided to start the church. I thought if we could have 500, then we would, you know, the next week we'd fall down to 100 and we'd be safe, you know, or whatever. But we had 529, and so it was great. And I mean, I can get to that, going back to that attendance later if you want, but so we had that on launch day, which was incredible. And we were like, you know, we're amazing church planters. We're the best, you know?
Right. And now, hang on. Now, I know, and you know this as well. I know that you know this. Like, that number is not your identity.
No.
And we can name churches that have launched with over 1,000, and they have themselves a nice, solid, epic moral failure year later. And then we've had churches that launch. I mean, I think Elevation launched with 121, and they panned out pretty well too. So the number on launch day is not the end all be all. Right. However, that is pretty substantial, though. I mean, that's one of the largest I've personally heard of and familiar with. And I think anywhere north of 300 to 400 people as a church plant, not a campus launch, or a fully funded, we're going to send you out, all 10 of you with $1 million. Not that, but just an organic church. That's really substantial. Did you feel that? Were you hyped? Like, was it like, hey, this is great?
I was out of my mind, excited. I was just like, oh my gosh, like we did it. And then I woke up at 3:00 in the morning on Monday, and I was like, frick, we got to do this again. And Sunday comes every 7 days or every 6 days. I never understand that math, but it comes every week. And so I was like, all right, well, here we go. And I feel like
was your team pretty psyched?
Oh, dude, they were just out of their mind. And what's funny is several of them, I think, man, you're going to see this as an excuse, but 20 somethings, they're 20 somethings. And so they love the hype, and then that's it. And so we had a lot of people that were you asked about launch team, on our launch team that were so committed, and they never came to church again. It's like, okay, guy. So we learned a lot about that for sure.
Sure.
And,
Okay. So people come, you had 529 people, which is nothing to laugh at. Or that's a substantial number of people. So you've done that. And again, just to recap, what do you attribute that to? Is that really all social media? How many of those people had you personally shaken hands with prior to them showing up that day? Just give it a guess. Was it 20% of those people, 100 people, or what?
Man, probably not. Probably not 20%. Probably not even that. The people that showed up primarily were via social media. The people I had shaken hands with were people on our launch team that we met at kickoff parties, that we met online. What I did actually the 2 weeks before was I reached out to every single person on our launch team, and I gave them an individual challenge of how many people to bring on launch day. And I told them, this is based on what I think you can do. So prove me right or prove me wrong. And so like some people, I would say, I believe that you can, some of the people that moved with us that were the most committed, I was like, I believe you can get 2 people there, because they knew no one. And then other people that joined our launch team, they were some of the most outgoing people I've ever met. I was like, you can have 15 people here on launch day, and if you don't, I think that's disappointing. And so like the texts were very, very much geared that way. And so a lot of people just bring in their friends, inviting their friends, that kind of thing. But then, you know, that 529, I don't know, maybe 75 of those were friends and family of people on the launch team, friends and family of Sarah and I. Sarah's parents,
and they're not coming back.
They weren't coming back.
That's not for that.
Yeah. A lot of people that donated, they showed up. And so some of that it was good. It was a confidence booster, but then you get to week 2 and
so hang on. Before you get to week 2, give us some of the play-by-play of what you do at your church, at least back on this particular day. Are they filling out a connection card? Do you have the tent out front? Like what's your CTA for the day? What are you calling them to do on launch day? And is it any different than what you do every other Sunday?
So on launch day so the way that we operate is, or at that time it was 10 a.m. start time. We have, and
you're doing one service.
Right? We did one service. Okay. Our facility fits 1,200 people. And at the time we were, because of COVID, our volunteers had to wear masks, and our ushers set people every other row. So it was like a packed building, but it wasn't. So it felt packed because we were seating people every other row, which is weird because we still have our ushers do that just to make it feel tighter. Sure. And we pipe and drape everything, and we did some pipe and drape that day. But so when people arrived, we would, we did the whole flasher thing on that day, especially because we needed that parking. No, we didn't. Because it was the first Sunday. There were no first-time guests. Everyone was a first-time guest.
Everyone's first time.
And so when people we would have our team walk people from the parking lot all the way in. And so they would communicate with them, talk to them, get to know their name. We trained people on like, hey, you need to connect people to people. And so if you see this guy with Jordans on, you need to register that in your mind that Dylan loves Jordans. And you need to connect that and say, hey, I love your shoes. I need to introduce you to Dylan because that guy's got a huge shoe collection. Little things like that. And we preached over and over that, and I heard this from Oprah, that love is in the details. And so we were like, we tried to be very detail oriented that day.
That's
and
great.
every Sunday since. But walk them to the tent, and at the tent they got a packet that had a t-shirt. Inside the packet, it was also an info card that was about, I don't know, 4x8 size or whatever. And it had fun facts. And it's really like the culture of our church is just like, you think of several people have told us, like, it's like a college ministry. It's like, well, we're reaching young people, it's not a college ministry, but whatever. If you want to be old, you can be old. And so we would have like little things on it, like one of Austin's favorite songs is Photograph by Nickelback, like At Him Later. Sarah laughs at everything. We moved here during a pandemic, things like that. And then on there, ways they could get connected. And then on launch day, Sarah and I did the Welcome to Church after party. And that was basically what we did at the kickoff parties. We communicated how we got here, why we started the church, why you should be a part of it. And so that was immediately following. We had probably 50 people stay for that. And we shared and communicated, and a lot of them joined our team and got connected that day. So that's the one thing that we did different. We still do the after party. It would be like, I guess kind of like a growth track, but we're not doing a growth track, and it's basically it's an opportunity for us to say, hey, here's what we do at Heart and Soul. Here's our values, our 4 values. We're not copying everybody else. This is what makes us us. We would love for you to be a part of it. And here's how you sign up to serve. So, or sign up for a group.
That's good. So your first week is substantial. You've got people talking about Jordans, for example, those kind of details, which all sounds like, man, it takes people a year or 2 years to try to figure those details out. And I've been a part of churches that just never figure that out. And you seem to have locked all this in the first week during a pandemic, with a brand new baby, and all the things that just go along with the hassles of starting a church. So from then on, it's smooth sailing. Your church is running 10,000 people by now.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Or
is it like what's Monday and Tuesday the next day? Did you wake up with the traditional cliche church joke of a holy hangover? Because like you said, now it comes again. You got to do it again. Like, what did that look like?
I woke up just very excited. And, everyone says you'll drop half or whatever. And so I expected that. And we absolutely did. And week 2, I think we hit 310, something like that.
That's still great. Okay.
It was good.
So half is a win. That's great. Okay.
Yeah. And then, but we did not hit 529 again until this past Easter. So I don't know, 14 months in, we never hit that number again until Easter. And so that launch day, organizations like to look at launch day and say, that's the number they count, right? We launched 400 churches and they averaged 220, and, we have a 99% success rate. And usually those things are all around launch day. And I love, we're part of ARC, and, they've supported us in all kinds of ways, but I think that can be super misleading too, kind of like what you're saying.
Sure.
And you just have to be ready for that. There's been tons of lows. I mean, our first Christmas, we had, I think it was 120. That was our lowest. And
for the whole Christmas
Eve
experience, service,
that's it,
whatever.
Man, we were like we literally said, man, if we can get through November, get through all this on Christmas Eve, we're going to have this high. It's going to be amazing. Our first Christmas, 120 people. And and I was like, well, this is the best Christmas ever. And we weren't going to have church the next week. I don't remember. I guess it was just like everybody else takes off, so I guess we'll take off.
Yeah,
that kind of feel. Yeah. And so we took off, and I was literally thinking, oh shoot, like we had 120 people. We had a week off of church. No one's coming back. And now I will say, on that Christmas, it did snow, and but
I guess that counts. Yeah.
Man. Yeah. So that was a low one.
So let's talk. Yeah. So, okay. So now so this is September. What are we in now? We're coming up on 2 years now.
This September will be 2-year birthday.
All right. So give us again, more stats. Just kind of tell us where you are now. And it doesn't have to be good or bad. It's just like, where are you at now? How's the launch team doing? You doing the same amount of services? You in the same building? Kind of what's the last, just high level, quick overview? Yeah.
Same building. Just went to 2 services about a month and a half ago, averaging right at 400 people. Had 750 for Easter. So we're at the same exact place. Our launch team is, maybe 20% of them are still with us. Some of the people that moved with us, are no longer with us. And
do you consider that a fail, or is that now on the back end looking at it, you're like, hey, I needed you need people to get you to a certain place, but if they're not going on with you forever, that's not a bad thing. Like, how do you deal with that in your mind?
Yeah, I don't think it's a bad thing. I think
Yeah.
I've heard people say, you need scaffolding to build the building. And you don't want to think of people that way, but a lot of it is that way. You got people that are starters. They want to start something. They're excited, especially a lot of 20 somethings. They want to be a part of something new, something fresh, and they join and they're all about it. And then something else comes along and then the new flavor of the week. And so we do a lot of talk about, man, you need to get planted somewhere. If it's not here, it gets planted somewhere. I don't care where, but shoot, you can't just keep hopping from church to church. And so
how have on that note, then how have your demographics changed, or have they? Do you feel like it's the same as you had on launch day as far as the age is concerned?
Yeah, our average is still 26 of people that are involved and connected. So that's the only ones you can really track. But yeah, so they are, it's still very young. Our kids ministry is slowly growing based on those 20 somethings having babies.
Sure.
And we recently, the last few weeks, actually have had more gray heads. And so that all of that comes with its own
that's the politically
problems.
correct term.
I think it is
people.
too.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, the wrinkled up people. It's kind of like the old lady on SpongeBob. We have more of those. Chocolate.
So I have you on here so that you can say things that I get in trouble for.
Yeah, right.
I can deflect.
I'm not going to get canceled as much. Yeah, so they are. Yeah, we got more of that. Financially, we launched our first week. We had 529 people, and I want to say we had less dollars than that. So,
wait, less than $529 come into your offering. That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
So that's good for the psyche.
Yeah.
But are you keeping up now? I mean, are you ahead of budget? That $200,000, was that your safety margin, and that's what's kept you afloat this time? Like, that's what everybody wants to know. The launch, I feel like I'm talking to a lot of church planners, and the launch day is, of course, the pinnacle. If we can just get there, everything will be easy. Of course, that's hurdle number one. Then the Monday after, they're like, frick, that was dumb. We have to, like I said, do this again. And then they're like, well, if we can just make it to the first, Christmas or Easter, then we'll be good, because that's when we get that big bump again. And then that's where people start giving a lot of money. And then they get there and like, frick, well, we started spending a lot of money too. Dang it.
Yeah.
But I feel like one that is a little bit more relevant is, hey, once you're past your first year, I'm not saying it gets easier, but now you've proven something. You can compare September to September. You can compare Easter to Easter. You've made it through this first year. And so just hearing the little bit I know and the numbers you just shared, you are up and to the right.
Yep.
Now that you zoom out over the course of, let's say it's a year and a half.
Yep.
I mean, on the inside, if you can be real vulnerable with this, are you feeling that on the inside? Like you're seeing those numbers on the outside? Like, do you feel like, man, we've, again, I don't want to make light of it, like we've hit our stride and it's easy, because I know it's still effort, but like, do you feel like that? Do you feel like, hey, I got a second wind and this actually is working like I wanted it to?
Yeah, absolutely. So once we hit that 1 year mark, I started feeling quite a bit better, because we, after that first month, the first 4 to 6 weeks of launch, where it trickles down, after that, when we got to the 1 year mark, we were able to see that year over year. And that was super helpful for me, just like mentally, to be able to say, okay, we're not going to be a flash in the pan. Like we can hold this together. So, financially, we've held in, which has been, at first it was a huge struggle, because no one had money. No one was giving. Our biggest giver is a 21-year-old. So that's huge.
That is huge.
We don't have a lot, other than that, we don't have a lot of big givers, big hitters. It's just like $20 a week here and there. And so
consistent. Okay.
Very consistent. Yeah. That's been super helpful. And recently though, like I said, some of those gray heads, we've gotten a few of those, and giving has gone up a little bit. And so that's been great. And then our attendance since, this year over last year is up about 70%. So we feel good year over year, week over week, seeing that up and to the right. That's been good to be able to see it. So
that makes sense. All right. So now you've learned a few things. Let's jump into more of the philosophical side of things, the advice, the wisdom, something that's transferable. So I feel like your story is helpful and it's real, it's relevant. I think you're I think you're in the minority of having, I would say your story just over those last 2 years is a quote successful version of a launch. Sustainability, you are trending upwards in all or most of the main categories that people seem to care about and all that stuff. That's great. But so let's lean into that. Like you mentioned one of these earlier, so I got a few different questions I want to ask. You mentioned one of these earlier. So what would you do over again? You said, obviously you'd bring in somebody to tweak the sound. Like, what are some practical or maybe philosophical type things if you could do it again, or if you were crazy enough to start another church in your midlife crisis age or whatever? What would you do differently this time? Just one or two things.
Man,
I know I'm putting you on the spot.
Yeah, I would. What would I do different?
And you know what? It's not even. It's not even. No, that's fine. It's fine. Let me help you some more, because it's not a regret. I think when people ask that question, not just in church world, but anywhere, it sounds like a regret thing. Like, oh, I did that wrong. No. Yeah. It's not like you or I or anybody did something wrong. It's like, hey, but now that I know, the hindsight's 2020 thing, I probably would have done the money this way. I mean, you joked about the mailer. Maybe you wouldn't do a mailer, and that can be an answer. That's fine. But I just wonder if there's something else. Did you not bring a team member? Did you name something that didn't need to be named? Would you have started with 2 services, for example, or did you move to 2 services too late? I'm just curious about any of those kind of things.
So, okay. Yeah. All right. That definitely helps. So, definitely would not do the mailer. Absolutely would not. We did that again in January of 21, thinking, oh, we'll try it again. Idiot. Yeah. So stupid. Waste of money. And we'll never, ever do a mailer ever again. You spend $10,000. So if you do that on social media, that's so much more effective. Anyway, we wouldn't do that. We probably would have launched with 2 services. I was afraid, though, to be honest. I was just afraid that we weren't going to hit 500 and we weren't going to have enough people to fill up 2. And
you have a big room. That's a big room.
It's a very big room.
People to sit in.
And so, we would definitely have started with 2. And then
that's good.
Maybe gone back to 1 and just not been afraid of that. But that's like another thing where it's like, man, if we go to 2, we can never go back to 1.
Can't go back. Right.
It'll just look bad to people. And it's like, I feel like maybe people don't care as much as you think they do. And
that's right.
So that,
I agree.
Let's see. I would probably ask people more boldly to give, and they were on the launch team. I would probably hold them to a higher level and maybe even make tiers. Maybe this is a stupid idea. It's the first time I've said it out loud, but
that's good.
Maybe make tiers of launch team. So if you want to be on the A team, you need to start giving. If you want to be on the B team, just show up or get rid of the name entirely. What we did really well is we didn't give titles. We didn't give positions of authority. We just said, hey, will you head this thing up real quick?
Yeah.
And we don't know how it'll go.
And you would do that. You would do that again, though.
I would do that again. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. I like that. That's some good wisdom.
We didn't give any titles away to anybody until after we launched to see who was sticking and who was actually good. And so we chose all that based on our 4 values. And I remember, man, so much of this is just such a credit to Sarah too, which is so annoying to me because I read all the time and I listen to so many podcasts and we'll have a decision to make. And I'm like thinking back, all right, what would Andy Stanley do? All right, what was that Craig said? And then Sarah comes in with the smartest thing I've ever heard. And she hasn't read a book since middle school and doesn't listen to podcasts. She just lives her life. And I'm like, this girl, so annoying. I'm glad I married her. And so, so much of that was Sarah too. When we first knew we were going to start, I listened to every ARC conference podcast out there.
Yeah.
And again, we're ARC. We love ARC. But when we were listening to it on the way to vacation, every single person that got up there and talked, they all had the same inflection points. They all sounded the same. They had the same kind of talking styles, everything. And Sarah looked over at me and she said, is this the same person or are these 4 different people that are talking? I was like, oh no, this is 4 different people. This is, this guy and this guy. And I was naming them. And she was like, she looked at me and she said, if you ever start to sound like these guys, I will kill you. And I was like, dang, dude, okay, calm down. She said, just be yourself. I was like,
just be you. That's
okay.
Good.
Which is, Dad's always been a big Ed Young fan, and I like Ed Young too. He's crazy and whatever, but man, he is just him, and so we've tried to do that, but We
All right,
we
so
did try
now,
growth track.
okay.
Huge mistake. We're not a growth track church. We're just not.
This is not you.
It's not us. And so that's when
good.
we changed it to after party. We were doing growth track. Oh, we'll try it 4 steps. Like, everybody, no, we did that for 2 weeks and we were like, this sucks. And then we said, oh, we'll move it to 2 weeks. It's like, no, that people don't come to church 2 weeks in a row. So then we said, okay, we'll do the after party 1 week. Why do we stop doing things that were working before we launched the church? And so
that's right.
We would do that earlier on. It's just keep doing the things that kept working. What are we doing?
Yeah.
Why are we
don't sabotage
now we're
yourself.
a church and we're trying to do churchy things. Like stop. Like let's just go back to what was working before we were a church. So
all right, so you're already in this vein, but I'm still going to ask the question regardless as we close this thing up. We got just a few minutes left. Like, what is the big key pieces of advice? I know, and you've laid out a lot of stuff the whole day that hopefully people are taking notes on and going to, steal or whatever and make better. But like, you only get 1 or 2. You get like the 140 character version here. Like, what are 1 or 2 of those principles? You're like, hey, if you do nothing else, do this. And it can be practical, like again, maybe pipe and drape or tweak the sound or whatever, or maybe it's just philosophical, like you just said, be yourself. I think that's huge. Everybody does want to be the other church planner, but they also want to be the 20-year veteran version. Everybody's like, I want to be like Chris Hodges. Yeah, but do you want to be like that 20 years ago?
Yeah.
Because everybody wants to be the Stephen Furtick, except they don't like 121 on launch day that Stephen Furtick had while he was preaching and leading worship.
They don't want that bleached blonde hair either.
Or those buckle jeans. Come on. I love my GBX boots though. I miss
somebody.
Those. So I guess, as we close this out, like give some people some advice or maybe just wisdom or encouragement. What would you say?
Yeah. So I would say I think this is the big thing is just like what you said, Chris Hodges, he bleeds the 4 values that they have, the choose joy and God first or whatever. I don't even know what their values are. He bleeds those things. That's who he is. They started their church because of that. The know God, find freedom, discover purpose, make a difference. Yeah. It's a great system because that's who they are. That's who Chris Hodges is. Love him. Right. That's great. That's awesome for Highlands. But one thing that we did that I would encourage everybody, and I have encouraged so many people, is just freaking be yourself. Don't pick values that other people picked. Don't pick values that other people have. Everybody wants to say, Jesus is our message, generosity is our privilege, excellence is our standard. And these things sound good on paper. They sound good on a website, but it doesn't matter if it's not who you are. And so
that's great.
Why would you choose that? So we didn't, we went against some of the things and just chose the 4 that were for us. We call the champion out people. We bring our own weather. We do whatever it takes. We are a party. Those are 4 things that Sarah and I just are. That's who we are. Sarah is, when she walks in the room, she literally brings her own weather. It doesn't matter the circumstances. She brings like the Holy Spirit into the room. We like to have fun. We like to celebrate. We're a party. So we chose those 4. We lived those 4 out. We challenge those 4. We encourage those 4 all throughout the church and throughout the leaders. We pick our leaders based on those 4, if they also are those 4. And we would absolutely do that again. And so
that's really
people
good.
that are listening probably aren't those 4, but there's something that you are. And it's probably not 8. It's probably not 10. Yeah. It's probably 3 or 4 things that you can actually do well, not to the detriment of everything else, but you got to just know who you are. So if that's Enneagram, spiritual gifts, DISC, like freaking whatever, find out who you are, what you do well, and just lean into those things. And ask a lot. What we did, I put a goal to ask as many pastors questions as I possibly could. So I asked this question to every single church planter and pastor that I can meet. 6 months before you started your church, what do I not know that I need to know? So like wherever I was in the planting journey, if I was 5 months, 4 months, 3 months, a year, whatever, I would ask them, what do I not know that I need to know? And got some of the best answers and things that we applied directly.
That's great.
From that. So that would be my 2 things.
Dude, I love that. And I'm a big fan. That's why I asked you to do this, but I appreciate it. I think you said a lot of wisdom today. And I think your story is relevant and very encouraging to a lot of people. So I'll stop recording this bad boy. I hang on, talk about other stuff. But dude, thanks a lot for sharing that story. That was very fun for me. Hopefully, it was entertaining for you.
Oh yeah,
not as painful to have to go back to some. And I'll
add this one thing. And we we used Sweb a lot. so
that's the game changer, right?
It really, man, I'm telling you, a lot of the I mean, honestly, a lot of things I'm saying right now, and some of the things I've said, hopefully for the better, you're sitting there thinking like, yeah, idiot, I told you that. Like,
I would never say idiot.
Oh, okay,
I would never say that.
So, and then also, this is the last thing, and I'll shut up, is a lot of people I went to the ARC thing, like the training, there's like 30 couples there. Almost every single couple worked at a mega church. Almost every single one. And so they go into the church planting journey thinking that they're going to start Elevation or start Highlands because that's where they're coming from. And they have no grit about them. This is not everybody, but they don't have any like, you know, we're just going to ghetto rig this thing. And like, it just has to happen. We're just, you know, it's all.
Frick, that's a whole other episode.
It's a whole other
get me all fired up. You know?
It's all like money and this, that, and the other. And we came from a church plant and one that had no money. And so we were always, man, we didn't have kid walls. We had pipe and drape and banners that somebody printed off for us.
That's crazy.
Now I look back, I'm like, man, I can't believe we did it that way, but it helped us. And we had to, we still today have to teach our team like, hey, look, like, freaking, we don't set up a stage or chairs. Like, setup is fine. You're okay. So anyway,
that's good.
Go work for a church plant.
Dude. Go work for a church plant.
Yeah,
that'll make you tough, strong,
I
gritty.
don't know, something like that.
All right, we'll see you guys later.